All right, here we are. Welcome. Hello, Aman. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's so good to see you again.
Yes, you too. Gosh, has it been like 4 years?
I think the last time we saw each other was at the Analog Astronaut Conference a year ago, maybe, and not like in 2023.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
before then was at Space Camp when Inspiration 4, who their crewmates
Yes.
Polaris is now launching, but when they were inducted in the Space Camp Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about that. Where were you when you saw the walk yesterday? Did you watch them
I did.
exit?
No, yeah. I mean, it was early, as you know. So I'm up early anyway. So I was up and
Yeah.
I saw it pop up and I'm like, yes. And then my daughter, who's 2 years old, she woke up and I said, all right, honey, we're
Oh,
going to go watch the spacewalk. And she went downstairs with me and we watched it on my phone. And she's like, she's very excited since she saw me launch and she thinks I should be on every spaceship. So she's like, Daddy's
I can
spaceship? I'm like,
imagine.
not yet, honey.
Oh my gosh, to have a daughter, to see this and see this part of history and see you be part of it. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's go back and start where our story started at the Analog Astronaut Conference, a place where a lot of us who are in the field or in the industry touching it from remotely or from the side, I guess I should say. We all have day jobs. And then our communication and efforts and work as analog astronauts helps us to understand mission focus, I think. So let's talk about what you were doing there and why what we bring to the analog conferences individually and then collectively. Let's talk about when we first saw each other, your work and what you were doing or what you were looking to do at the conference.
Yeah. So I think the analog group of people, because it is really like a niche group of people who do this. I don't think it's a wide group.
Sure
Really brings a
is.
lot to the table, and for a number of reasons. One, it's if you're gonna fund research in space, you need to, test it on Earth because it's a lot cheaper to do these things here than to, do it in this little time most people have in space. So the analog astronaut the community and the groups and the different missions actually provide a lot of space for that kind of research so we can really kind of test out things that want to happen in space. The big things being crew dynamics, but there's other things like research, growing plants and resource utilization, because often in these simulations you are resource limited. Now, I was lucky because I was included as part of Inclusion One, which was the first analog mission in
Yes.
SAM at Biosphere 2, and SAM
Yes.
uh is the wow, why am I blinking now? Simulation
Something analog Mars. It's that
and
simple.
Moon, Mars and Moon.
Yeah.
I know, and I'm blanking on the S.
No, it's
And I
okay. And
apologize.
you got a
Space analog,
sparkling
space. I think
new.
it's space analog. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so that was awesome. I was the medical officer. I was there with a crew of three other people, and I was trying to do research there on, does an artificial like robot seal, does that provide comfort to people when they're stuck in close confinements over long periods of time? The
Does
end
it?
results, yeah, I think the end results were it depends on the person. So half of
Oh,
us found it helpful, half of us did not. And we did that also the second inclusion mission, and we did it at a mission in Poland. So three different places we had looked at it, and really it
at
just depends on the
Lunaris.
person at Lunaris.
I
Yeah,
love Lunaris. Oh, it's
yeah,
such a beautiful facility. But you got a sparkling new Sam, like right out the box, like
yeah.
brand
It was
new. So were you
awesome.
still getting the kinks out and like learning how to work it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of what we were there for was the real person utilization, right? This is like the live first test of SAM and its pressurization, its CO2 kind of monitoring systems, all of it. So
Yeah.
while we brought our own research, I think we could have just gone in there without any research and worked on, as you said, the kinks. I mean, the team has done an excellent job. It's an excellent facility, but there were things like we
Sure.
realized that the filters for the water, because once again, resource utilization probably weren't as good as you needed. Luckily we didn't have to reuse any of the water, but when you were taking kitchen water, it wasn't as it didn't filter it as much as the team would have liked, like the SAM team, not just us. So they had fixed that by the next one, and other things like, oh, maybe putting something here for privacy. if someone wants to
Yeah,
go in this room, simple things like that. And then also systemic things of like, okay, how did this work? What do we need to do here? What do we need to do there? So it was helpful. I think they had our mission, they had inclusion too, and I believe they've had one other mission in there since
that's
uh,
great.
our departure. And then beyond that, the community I think is great. This is what I tell anyone interested in space, whether you want to go to space, you want to work in space industry, is all of these groups that you meet. I mean, they're vastly valuable because one, you never know who you're going to meet that might be able to help you in your journey, but also you're trying to do
Mm.
such a crazy thing that a lot of people aren't really into, which is like, oh, I want to go to space or I want to be in the space industry, that you need the people to uplift you. And so in that analog astronaut group is a very eclectic group of people from both thought
Eclectic.
processes, uh,
Mm.
professional careers, what people do, and their different desires for space. Some want to go to space, some don't want to go to space. And so having that group of people that are all kind of supporting each other, I think is very important when you're doing hard things.
Yeah, and it's really what you did is exactly what an analog should be is testing from, and a lot of people are like, oh, they have different ideas of what gets tested, but at the very core, the facility itself gets tested. And we talk about, you said crew dynamics, and there's a lot of other materials. I want to ask you a little bit more about the robot too. Was it an AI or was it just a regular tangible that people could see and interact with? What was the robot?
Yeah, so it's a parotherapeutic robot, and it's actually been FDA approved for use in like nursing homes and places like that for elderly
Oh,
people where they may need some interaction to kind of, you know, make them feel better. So
yeah.
the robot is AI enabled in the sense that it reacts to you, it learns who you are and learns your voice, and it will coo and make other noises when it knows you're there and look at you. It doesn't
Oh,
like talk to you or anything like that. Uh, it was made to be a seal. I found this out later because I was like, why is it not a cat or a dog? These are common pets. But because us as humans in this culture, at least, our expectations, we know what to expect from a cat and a dog. So we will quickly be like, this isn't the real thing. But no one
oh,
really, I don't interact with the seal every day. So
what?
yeah, he purposefully did that. It was cool. I mean, yeah, I
How
was one of the people that
interesting.
probably would be okay without it, but it was a nice idea.
I don't know how I'd feel. Same with an octopus. I would have no idea. I'd be like, is that normal behavior for you
That's
to
right.
talk to me or look at me like you are?
Why do you have all eight arms around me right now? Is this affectionate or is
Right.
this
Are you
aggressive?
killing me slowly?
Yeah.
Right. That is so interesting. So, as a fellow analog astronaut, I'm so intrigued. This is the kind of stuff I love hearing about. I know the community appreciates too, for two reasons. And now I'm going to try to transition this. Not try, watch. Let's do this. Uh, Number one, because true testing and putting yourself into the analog is part of eventually how we're going to get to space and get, to apply things and work out the kinks. But I think secondly is when you test these things, um, there is a sense of what's going to work, what's not going to work. How am I going to respond? What's going to test me as well? So now that we know that you've done a few analog missions and you're part of the analog community, I'm going to just fast forward, fast track to what has happened recently. And everyone is so excited to hear about your recent space flight and cannot wait to start to transition and connect those dots. I know it was with Blue Origin, correct? And
Correct.
so it was, I'm sure, even if it was like a short amount of time, was it as much as needed? Tell us, walk us through, first of all, how you got the news and how you applied.
Yes. So I have been trying to go to space for 20 years. Really, I mean, as a child, I wanted to do it, but uh, as a adult who's actively applying for things since 2005, I applied with NASA every chance I've gotten. I've done it 5 times. My fifth application is in now. And I was a finalist in 2009 with Dr. Proctor, Siam Proctor, and that's where we met. And then in 2013 with Jessica Meir, who ended up being picked up by NASA.
Yeah.
So I was close. but not close enough. And then the following two applications didn't even make it through round one. So my faith in being able to be picked up by NASA had diminished. And
Mm,
I think for a lot of us in both the space community and analog astronaut community, everything changed in 2021 because that's when Virgin launched. That's when Blue Origin launched their new Shepard. That's when SpaceX launched Inspiration 4. It was a
yeah.
big year, and it was really the coming of what I think is the new era of space, or the new golden era of space. I mean, we had Polaris Dawn just yesterday do the first spacewalk, 55
So
years
great.
to the on the date after the Gemini spacewalk. So pretty amazing time to be alive. But when 2021 hit, I said, "Oh, there's other ways to get to space outside of NASA." So I looked into everything, any opportunity, and whether it was things like Space for Humanity, whether it was Web3 companies like Space Plus or Moondao, which is the group that the community that finally supported me go. And what they did is in 2021, they had this audacious idea of crowdfunding a ticket to space. So they just put a call out there on the internet, send us Ethereum, and we'll send a community member to space. And in that process, they raised something like $8 million in 30 days. It was
Insane.
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 Absolutely.
I
That
had
was like
heard
during
about
the
this
height.
at the time, and I was like,
Yeah.
first of all, what is Moondao? Second of all, how does this work? Can you walk
Yeah.
us through that? How
So
that works?
yeah,
Like they just put a call out. Some communities worse, I don't want to say selectively had heard about it, but if you didn't know about um cryptocurrency or how a lot of this was already in existence and working, you did not know. How did
it
you
was
find it?
definitely
Were
a
you already?
barrier.
Yeah.
I had started looking into cryptocurrency and NFTs really in like 2019, 2020. So I had been getting more involved, and I had seen that a few, Space Plus, and then there was Crypto Space Agency and Moondao were all sending people to space, and all of them were Web3 based, which is pretty wild. But I guess that's the easiest way to raise a lot of money in an unconventional manner: buy a ticket to space and send a community member. Now, Moondao, what they did is when they raised that much money, they said, well, we'll buy two tickets. So they ended up buying two tickets on Blue Origin. They sent an influencer, Kobe Cotton, Dude Perfect, which I think a lot of the people in a generation or two below mine know who that is. And they sent him, the community voted on him to go. And then the second seat was raffled off. There was 10,000 tickets. You could get a ticket for free. So all you had to do is have a crypto wallet and mint the NFT. So really small financial barrier of entry, but a huge learning barrier if you know nothing about crypto and
Sure.
wallets and NFTs.
Okay,
But
so I had
10,000.
a crypto wallet, but I don't have an NFT, so I wasn't valid, correct? I had
Yeah,
to,
you would have had to mint the NFT through their
I
website.
see.
Yeah,
Oh
so you had to
gosh.
have known enough to like go to their website and minted the NFT.
Okay.
10,000 people. I remember I was on my baby moon. This was in 2021 before my
Okay.
daughter was born. And I was like, it was 10 o'clock. I was like, honey, I'm going to go downstairs, watch the drawing. I'll be right back up. It took
This
like
is how
three
it
or
always
four
starts.
hours.
It's late at night and we have our best ideas or our most ridiculous, crazy ideas. And what is it about? Was there like, there was probably a full moon and all these things come together?
I mean, it is. It's really, and I remember just sitting up till like 3 a.m. And then actually, I didn't win that drawing at all. I didn't even come up in the top 10. It was Chinese national named Yan, and Moondao, to their effort, and Blue Origin, to their effort, tried to do everything he could to get him to fly. So they, for a year, hired lawyers, talked to embassies, talked to the Chinese embassy, and the
Oh,
US government would not give him a visa. Blue Origin was planning on how do you train someone if they speak Chinese, if they don't speak English?
mm,
Because to date,
mm,
everyone I think who's flown with them has spoken English. But what do you do if someone wants to fly that doesn't speak English fluently?
yeah.
But the US government wouldn't allow it. And after a year, Moondao said, okay, we got to do this again. So they had a second drawing in, I think it was in December of last year. And once again, this time only 2,200 people applied, got NFTs. And I was one of them. And I sat there with my son. I have a 9-year-old son and my wife at like 8 p.m. And they're drawing the numbers. And I'm number 4. So I
Oh,
didn't win. So I'm like, disappointed I didn't win. And my wife looked at me. She's like, no, 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 no. You're much closer than you were yesterday. You're just need 3 people to drop out, and then that ticket's yours. I'm like, okay, well, she had a
that's
point. She had a valid point.
great.
Yeah,
Optimistic.
it was very optimistic. And so I waited. And the next morning, I saw someone on Discord being like, hey, I'm so excited. I'm Chinese. Can't wait to come. And I was like, well, he's out because that was the issue with the first person. They couldn't get
Yeah.
over here. I don't know what happened with the second person. The third person I heard was gifted the ticket. It'd be like if you bought it for your brother. And the brother was like,
Gifted a ticket. I just have to stop right there. Gifted a ticket to space, which is not unlike the Chris Zambrowski
yes,
story.
very much so. Very much so. But this person didn't want to go. I think they took a look at the risks and they said, nope, this is not for me. Unlike
Okay,
Chris, who,
fair.
yeah,
So here
wild.
you are.
So here I am. I get a call. It was the day after the solar eclipse. So, we went and watched it in Indiana. And on the drive back, I get a text like, we need to talk to you tomorrow. And it was the Moondown guys. I'm like, Amber, maybe, maybe. I'm talking to my wife. She's like, maybe. And they called me and they're like, you got the ticket. It was in the middle of the workday. I was in clinic. So I called my wife jumping up and down on FaceTime. And then my brother is a doctor also, and he works a floor below me. I'm like, where are you? And he's like, my office. So I ran down there and we were just, pure joy because it is a very rare thing. I mean, I am the 704th person in space officially. And I made it, but there was
Congratulations.
no guarantees, right? And these tickets
Right,
are
right.
so expensive. Like to be able to purchase your way on a flight is not for most people. And as a physician, it's even out of my range of like ability to afford these things practically, right? Because you have homes and food and school, whatever else
Sure.
that takes
Yeah.
prior. So
Yeah.
it was very, very, I feel very grateful because there was no guarantee, but as I said, I probably applied to 8 or 9 things outside of NASA. Every time I would see an opportunity, I made videos for, they were trying to do a couple of TV shows, right? So I drive down to like the Alabama border where they have rockets at the rest stop, and I'd make videos by the rockets and I would submit it. So
Yes.
every single thing, and then finally this one hit. So yeah, I went to space, which is pretty wild.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So it is pretty wild. It is, Iman. I'm so excited. I remember Cyan telling me when you got selected, we were together this summer at
Yeah.
Space Camp Alumni Reunion Weekend, and we were celebrating you and the news and everything. And I was just like, wait, hold on. I feel like I just saw him at the Analog Astronaut Conference and now he's going to space. That's two for two. That's you and
That's
Cyan
pretty
Soul.
good.
That's pretty great that we're represented. Okay, so first you tell your wife, then you tell family and friends. Was there any restrictions of like, okay, and then what was next for training? Like they called you and then was it get your butt to Blue Origin or what happened next?
So Moondow wanted to announce it, and they could have, so we announced it maybe a week after they told me. So I told
You
my
sat
wife and
on
my
this for a
brother.
week.
I
Oh
sat
my
around for a week.
gosh.
I did tell my parents that
I would
Friday, but I told
also.
them in person. I told them in
Yeah.
person because
Okay, good.
I felt like that was a conversation that needed to be had in person. Now, they were very supportive because they knew I've been doing this for 20 years. I think when I first applied to NASA, they were like, "What are you doing? Like, you're a physician." But 20 years of me like hammering into their head that this is what I want to do, they were 100% supportive, and they were like, "Okay, yeah, this makes sense that you got this." They're very optimistic people. They think if you
Oh,
if you work hard and look for opportunities, you can succeed. So
wonderful parents.
then the day of the announcement, I think it was going to be like 7 p.m. I was texting people. I was like, you might want to check this YouTube live stream out. And I was super excited. There's everyone was excited for me, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Blue Origin, it depends on where you are in the lineup. So typically the way the training works, you're in communication with them constantly up
Okay.
until your flight, whether your flight is tomorrow or if it's, I think 2 years from now, because there are people who have signed up, right, going out into the future. But really, the training that is required is just done right before the flight. So you show up 3 days before flight, then 2 days before flight, you do all the simulation, doing all the nominal training. So what's this going to feel like? They have a great simulator. It makes all the noises. You're wearing your flight suit. You're wearing anything you're going to have on you. So you're
Oh my
making it as real
gosh.
as you can, minus the zero G and, the lack of a rocket being strapped underneath you.
Oh my
But
gosh.
it's awesome. So the first day is all nominal training, and then the second day is all off nominal training. So what do you do if there's a fire? What do you do if there's something wrong with the oxygen or if the CO2 level is raising? What if you need to make an emergency egress? while you're still on the launch pad, where do you
Great.
go?
Great.
And so you walk through all of those things. They've built a beautiful capsule. I mean, it is very automated. It's very straightforward. Really allows, I think, for anyone who wants to fly to fly. It really, uh, it's an impressive machine. It's a
It
very
felt
impressive,
comfortable to step into and
super
see and be
comfortable.
in. Did the
Yeah.
simulator on the ground or whatever capsule you worked inside look equal to and feel like after you've done all these analogs where you're locked inside with strangers at the SAM, were you like, this is nice. This is quite
It is
nice.
quite nice. The seats are really comfortable. They're fitted to, the air conditioning's on, and you're
Oh
going to
gosh.
space. So I think you have a little bit more what's the word? Patience for everything.
Oh,
Now we
sure.
had a very super, like, probably the best flight you could have had. We had a few second delay. You know
Okay.
how flights go. Sometimes they're
Sure.
45 minutes, an hour. You can sit, sometimes you get scrubbed.
Yeah.
But I think we were supposed to take off at 8 a.m. I think it was like 8:01 a.m. So we had like zero wait time. And
Nice.
and they'd never gone through clouds before. They always do clear skies, but it was a cloudy morning. And they decided to let us launch through the clouds, which, they asked us about it afterwards. What did you think? Did it take away from the experience? And I don't think it did at all. It was super cool to go through the clouds like instantaneously, right? Because
Instant.
on an airplane, you go and you're like, okay, yeah, and then you get so high and you're looking down and the clouds might as well be the ground because you're so high up and it just takes a different look.
Wow.
The view changes, which is pretty amazing.
Do you know a mutual friend, perhaps Kirby Runyon,
I
who's
do
a
not know Kirby.
astrogeologist? Okay, so he works to showcase some analog astronauts and astronauts in general, or educators, what they're going to see from said launch in
Oh,
space, back down on Earth geologically, like canyons and rock formations that will eventually translate into launch sites on other planets.
yeah.
So when you look back on the earth, I mean, there are people who know exactly where you are, and like Kirby, who say, okay, you'll see this vista or these canyons and all kinds of formations. So you understand it. But with the cloud cover, were you able to see much of
I'll be
Earth one?
honest. The I don't even remember looking at the ground. It was all horizon for me. I
Okay.
looked out and I was like, holy smokes. I mean, you are seeing, Cyan describes Earthlight, and the Earth is beautiful. The colors, the brightness, it's just absolutely amazing looking at it. But then there is this line, and it is space. You are so it's not like on Earth, if I'm in this room and it's dark and I turn on the light, it lights everything up. The darkness kind of fades. Even in the corners, there's some light. Up there, it is bright, 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 and it is a deep dark black, unlike anything I'd ever seen. And it's not
Wow.
to me, it wasn't scary or concerning. It was all very peaceful, and I can close my eyes and I can still see that that sense of the earth and kind of the curvature and in the blackness of space. So I didn't pick out any landmarks. I think if I'd been up there, we had maybe 3 minutes floating around, and then we had to get back in our seats. So it's a short flight, 11 minutes typically round trip,
Wow.
which is enough. You're in space. I mean, I would like more. I'm now desiring even
You're
more
an
so an orbital flight,
addict.
and I would take another suborbital flight if anyone wants to send me. But
Sure.
but it was immense. And then I got back in my seat before, when the 30-second mark or whatever, you got to get back in before descent. And the capsule, once again, beautifully designed, rotates 2 degrees a second. So every seat gets a 360 view. It's
Wow.
not like the Virgin flights, all the windows point down so you can see the earth, but you can't see necessarily the sun or something else unless you move windows and you're very like conscientious of it. So I got back in my seat and the capsule turned in just the right way for the sun to come through my crewmate's window right in front of me. So all of a sudden I was basking in this sunlight and this radiant kind of feeling. I almost felt like, is this what a baby feels like when they're born? Because my eyes were closed and it was just so bright and so calming. It was amazing. It was just like an immense feeling to feel the sun, removed from our atmosphere, and and so surprising because I was not expecting that. And it was the perfect
Oh,
time because I was already back in my seat. There was nothing. I guess I could have looked out at the earth more, but once that sun hit me, there was not. I was just, yeah. Close your eyes, enjoy this moment because this
and what
is
was the capsule like? Was it quiet? Like, was it systems were humming, I'm sure, but enough environmental
very
quiet to
quiet,
take it all in?
very
Wow.
quiet. They purposefully design it and make it very quiet, particularly when you get, once the booster separates, because that's like
Yeah.
bonk. They are very mindful and they've created it to just make it quiet. And then once you start
Okay.
coming back in, you start hearing kind of a whistling where you're coming into the atmosphere. But
How
super
did you
quiet.
feel, doctor? How did it feel? Like any
Oh,
sickness, any
amazing. No,
nausea? No?
not really. When I first got out, I felt my stomach was like, "Oh," but it wasn't a nausea, it was just my stomach telling me like, "Oh, you're floating, something's up." I think because it's such a short time frame, the 3 minutes, no one's ever gotten sick on one of these flights. It's a little
Oh,
different than when you do the
wow.
0G flights, and the 0G flights, by the, like, 12th parabola, you're probably gonna throw up.
And
If
you've done
if
that?
you're prone to I have not done that, but I hear
Me
if you're prone
neither.
to it, you'll probably throw up,
Yeah, probably.
but
Yeah.
this one was smooth. No one got sick. No one felt sick.
Amazing.
I think Mike Mongo or someone says who you are on space is who you are on Earth. That's been said. I forget. I think it's Mike who said it first, but I
Sure.
would say that I totally agree with that because all of your senses are heightened. It's such an unusual experience. You're floating around. You're kind of your body doesn't know what it's doing or where it's at. And then you're just fully immersed in this experience of like seeing the earth, seeing space, knowing you're in space. And so when I got up there, I was the first one out of my harness, which was a little unusual because we had a young woman, Carson Kitchen. She's 21, the youngest woman to cross the Kármán line. And she normally was the first one to pop out. So at first I was like, how did I beat her out? So I have my like little 0G indicators. I have a little heart and a little moondial flag. And then I hear her say, I can't get out of my seat. And so I quickly snap into like doctor slash dad mode.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I turn around, I'm like, what's going on? She's like, I can't get the harnesses loosened at all. And I'm like, let me try. So I'm standing by her seat, floating by her seat, and I'm pulling the harnesses and I can't get them loose either because I think what happened is when you start floating, the foam expands underneath you in your seat, everything gets tighter. She's like,
Mm.
I'm okay. I'll stay in my seat. I'm like, no, 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 no. Let's try this again. So then I pulled the shoulder straps up, unharnessed her, pulled her out, and kind of just like pushed her towards the window. I'm like, look at the window and then get reoriented.
Oh, thank
Uh,
goodness you helped her.
Oh, of course, but I think it proves the point of like, when you're in such a heightened state, you're gonna be who you are, and
Who you
whatever that
are.
base nature is gonna come out. And for me, that's I'm a physician, I'm a father, and that's
Yeah,
a big part of my identity. So I think caretaking is like second
of
nature.
course. I'm hearing you say this, and I'm like, okay, so all the moms who fly are going to be like, are you good? Are you good? Are you good? And then by the time they land, the mom will have her moment and it'll all be over. That's so
That's
typical.
right.
No, I'm
That's
just
exactly
joking.
right. No, I mean it is quick, and you have to be very mindful of like doing what you want to do, which you practice right over and
Yeah.
over again
Oh,
during the
good,
shooting.
good.
Yeah. So
What
you're
was
like, okay,
going
I'm
through
gonna
your
do this.
mind? You said it was quiet. Was it peace? And you talked about the moment with the sunlight, which is so gorgeous. And we hear this from a lot of experienced quick flyers too, that there is that moment where you take it all in. I guess what's changed? Is there
Yeah.
life before the flight and life after the flight in your brain, in your personal perspective?
There definitely is. This definitely Mike Bongo said because I talked to him the other day, and he said, "You are now the actualized version of who you were 20 years ago. 20 years ago,
Oh
when I started on this
gosh.
journey, I
Wow, mic
envisioned that
drop.
this would happen, right? Like this is who I was going to be." He's like, "So you're there. You've done that. So that piece of you can at least rest. It doesn't mean you don't want to do more, but
Sure.
you met that goal." So
Oh,
there is that. There's like satisfaction in knowing that like you can do hard things, almost impossible dreams with just like small steps, perseverance, and not negating your own opportunities by not getting involved in something because you don't understand it.
yeah.
If it's really what you want to do, you take the time, you figure it out, and maybe that's your ticket. The other thing that changed is, the overview effect is pretty incredible. Some describe it as awe. I just described it as beautiful. It was very peaceful. I can still see it. I am not one really for like seeking artwork. Yeah, I don't like going to art museums. My wife does. I don't. But I was in New York on Tuesday for the Rise Now fashion show where a lot of astronauts walked. I went to attend and support my friend Amanda Wynn, who is the started that group, that not for profit. But I walked by MoMA, the Museum of Modern Arts in New York, and I was like, I kind of want to go in there. I want to go see if I can find something that is equivalent to what I experienced in space.
What'd you
So
find?
I did not find it. There was a lot of beautiful things. I enjoyed the art more.
Really?
I, but I think that it was such a vastly beautiful thing and it's such a unique thing that I'm probably going to seek it more and more. Like, where can I find this beauty? So, yeah, I think personally I've changed a little bit because I'm seeking more like the physical beauty in things,
Yeah,
like
interesting.
work, clothing, whatever else it may be. So we'll see. We'll see where that takes me.
Well, that's interesting. I think from other astronauts I've spoken with through the years, like Karen Nyberg, quilts
Yeah.
and is inspired by what she saw from space and built into her quilt from like collecting the cupola and the view of that. And, Cyan certainly took in the earth light. And a lot of artists who are already artists, you spoke about a sense of heightened sense of self and who you are. That's interesting because as a uh whoever you just talked about helping someone, as a, as a physician, you're right there. You're like, okay, let's help one another. And if it's art that is your language, there it is. If it's
Yeah.
medicine or assisting, there it is. This is a great question for those of us who would get to go to space. And I guess in a little teeny tiny way, I've got to expand on this in my own way. Obviously, I haven't gone to space yet, but with my non for profit Stories of Space, I love sharing the stories of others like yours and putting it here on platforms like Casual Space. But
Yeah.
now we've, officially become this non for profit where we take people's stories about space into space. And I'm sure
Oh,
you
cool.
took the Blue Origin postcards for the future. They were probably under your seat or in somewhere in the
Yes. And
capsule
I
or
took a
with
little
you.
zero G indicator, like a globe with a digital
Did you?
postcards too. Yeah.
Oh, that's so great. Thank you for doing that. Thank
Of
you.
course.
And so for me, I'm like, well, that's how I share. That's how I am. That would be my heightened sense of self. Like if I ever got to fly, I would say, what stories? Because if I love stories now here on the ground or
Yeah.
showcasing stories or helping others connect through space through story, I would do that in a way up there or out there. And if at night or if you say like right now, you can get there in that moment with that perspective that Frank White so shares, the overview effect. Can you tune in and to that immediately and just like right now go there, take that in and see it and connect to it?
Yeah, I mean, right now I can. I hope it doesn't fade. I'm
Ah,
sure over time it will, but I can. And there's things that'll trigger it. When I was flying back Wednesday morning, I had a 6 a.m. flight and the sun was rising, and you could see it
oh,
from the airplane. And that takes me back. Uh, yeah, there's lots of things. And when you talk to people who've flown on suborbital flights, they see it and they speak the same way that random things might trigger that sense, bring you right back there. But yeah,
ah.
I've been very mindful of like when I close my eyes, trying to, instead of meditating on, say, breath or other things, meditating on that image.
Did you hear what Jared said on his spacewalk?
Yeah,
That things are still a lot of work to do back on Earth, but looks pretty perfect from here. Wasn't that a great
it was
quote?
great. Yeah, it was a well
Definitely.
thought out quote. And then today there was a violin piece by Sarah, who was a professional violinist, with groups of, I think it looked like children orchestras throughout the world.
Oh,
So they pieced together this 4-minute video of playing this beautiful piece. So she's playing in space, and then there's all these, it cuts to different groups playing the same song all over the world, which was pretty
so
magnificent.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love what Jared is doing. I'm sure you do too, because you're part of it now. He's always pushing to go either further or different or beyond or first it was let's go further out in space with inspiration for. Now he's
Yeah.
saying let's do a spacewalk and test new suits and go to different places. I can't even imagine what's next, but I will sign up. Jared, Beth Mund available. I know you'll go back
I'll
to
sign
you're
up
on the
too. Yeah.
list.
He's got at least
Um,
two more flights. I think he's got one or two more Polaris missions planned, and then a Starship Heavy. I don't know if the third Polaris is
Gosh.
the heavy that's going to circumnavigate the moon, but there's definitely a mission in between. So if he's looking
He's
for a
probably got his
storyteller and a
crew.
physician,
Oh, hey, yes, yes. I mean, he's probably got this already planned, but you never know. I
probably, but
mean,
you never know.
look at how you came into this. This is great. What is your message is already in, woven throughout our conversation so far. But if I may be so bold to try to capture it, you had a vision all along. You kept following it all throughout the different opportunities. And it wasn't just a straight path. I think more and more people are finding that now with commercial space and civilian space. So, did I capture it? How would you say that would come?
Absolutely. I think that perseverance is important, or grit, whatever you want to call it. But if you have a big goal, you need that because it's easy to kind of give up. I think a support system is important, not just your family, but people who are trying to do what you're going to do. So in our case, the analog astronaut community. And then the third thing would be that even big goals can be broken down into small, kind of identifiable steps. So you don't need to be overwhelmed by trying to do something big. Just break it down and do the small things
Oh, yeah.
and see where it leads you.
I love that. That's fantastic. And I love, as someone who applied to NASA many times myself, not for flight, but to be an employee, that was definitely my narrative too. And I just kept at it until it finally came. And when it did, it was like no doubt. It was no doubt at all. It was just like this. I've been working so hard to get here that now that here has arrived, it doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter how. I was just like, let's go, let's step into
Yeah.
it and get going. But I'm speaking for myself. Leaving NASA was one of the hardest, most difficult decisions I've ever made, and the transition was very difficult. What was it? What is it now for you? What's next? Once you achieve something you've worked so long and hard for, how do you continue to move forward?
Well, I'm going to seek an orbital flight. So if you know anyone, for sure.
Yeah,
But
me
I
too.
mean, the short term is I'm actually working with I'm the first Nashvilleian, first public school graduate from Nashville. I'm the first physician on a commercial flight, first Iranian man, third Iranian. We've had two women lead the way. And so here in Middle Tennessee, I've actually am working with Metro Public Schools to go give talks. So I'm going to go back to my high school and give a talk.
Yeah.
That's already scheduled. I'm going to go to another county and give a talk. There's a Cub Scout group I'm talking at. So basically, just try to uh, motivate these young people is big part of it.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I would love to find a way to get into the space industry. There's limitations such as I'm not willing to move my family at this point because I grew up in Nashville and we have a lot of people here, a big support system. Um, so if I could do consulting work for space industry, whether they need a physician or a specialist like a cardiologist, that would be great if there's some other roles that I could
Oh,
fill.
sure.
So
Oh,
I could
yeah.
do kind of my base work part-time and do space work part-time would be awesome. I don't know if that's realistic, but
It
I set my plan out
fantastic.
there and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll talk. There's a lot of physicians at NASA and at space
Yes.
startups and space, as you know, companies that can do casework studies, look at biometrics and all kinds of omics studies. Like there's a lot.
Yeah.
Um, if you've been in teaching and enjoy and appreciate sending and sharing the message with kids, there's a place for that. This is what I love. And I love that the organization that I think is Space for Humanity is always looking for an ambassador just like you who
Correct.
goes, has that experience, and then shares it back with the community on Earth. So you could have flown with them and been very successful too because
Well,
you're doing exactly their mission.
I am going to be there an overview ambassador, which is like a new type
Oh,
of thing for people who have flown, not
there you
funded by
go.
Space for Humanity. But yeah, so we're working on an impact project and things like that that are important
Look at
to
that.
their mission, which is to kind of share that overview effect and improve life here on Earth.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect. We'll see how
Yeah.
well that aligned. And then at the office, has things changed? Do they give you a little hard time and joke with you a little bit more and be like, well, we got to treat him different now, a little extra sugar in the coffee around here.
I think everyone loves space. And even if they don't follow it, everyone's amazed by it. So patients take a little longer because they want to talk about
Oh,
it, which is fine.
especially
Everyone
the kids.
watched, especially the kids, everyone watched from work and was very excited for me. And people say, do you get tired of the question? Like, how was it? But for me, I'm very grateful that I can answer that because 3 weeks ago, I couldn't answer it. And six
Oh,
months ago, I didn't know if I could ever answer it. So I remind myself that it's worth taking the time. It's worth, spending that time with the person, the 1 minute or 2 minutes, and just, the clear answer is it's amazing. How was it? It's amazing. Why was it amazing? And then you can kind of go through everything. So,
yeah.
yeah, very fortunate to be in this position.
Well, we're fortunate that you got to share it here with all of us. I know there's going to be so many people who want to connect with you and continue the conversation. I want to invite you to a couple of things. There's a Nashville, I believe, chapter of Space Camp alumni. Would
Oh,
love to
nice.
hear from you and hear your story. And we had a guest on the show. His name is Scott Holcomb. I
Okay.
believe
That
he's
name's
in
familiar.
Nashville.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
he's
and
in
I
Nashville.
did family space camp with my son. So I have a
Oh,
9 year old
that's so
son. And as soon as he
great.
turned 6, we went. As soon as he was old enough, I'm like,
Oh,
we're going. So I am
well,
alumni
there
also.
you
So I could
go.
definitely participate.
Oh, I'm so glad. Okay, good. Yeah, we've got to get you and make sure that the Nashville chapter gets to hear from you, however and whatever that looks like. Scott Holcomb is there in Nashville, and he was I think it's Kadeo Takamine from Space Camp the movie.
Oh,
So now
wow.
he was the actor
That's
who is
awesome.
also worked at Space Camp for many years, and he lives there in Nashville. And just like you, I think he's a educator outreach ambassador for all things space and Space Camp. So we'll get you connected. And sharing your story is so precious. We thank you so much because there's so many different perspectives and ways in which one can experience space, just like your colleague now and uh, fellow astronaut William Shatner, who came back seeing that vast darkness, and
Yeah.
it really struck him, and he shared that. And I know everyone experiences it differently, but when you get to share it with us, your view of how your enhanced persona of who you are enhanced is a great perspective. So thank you.
No, thank you for letting me share it. And thank you for, taking the time today.
Yeah, well, I'm going to continue to follow in your footsteps and apply for all opportunities like this. Before I let you go, how do you thank Moon Dao? And what happens from
Yeah.
here? Like what did they are you still active in cryptocurrency and what's next?
So, yes, ever forever grateful to Moondao and still an active community member. So, their goal is to democratize space. Their audacious goal is to get people to the moon. We know that that's not 5 years away, probably, but maybe longer. So they have not only just sent two people to space, they've also funded something like 61 different projects that are space related. So you don't have to be a community member to apply if you have a proposal. You can get on their website. It's a simple Google Doc. If you have a space related idea that you would like funded, you should go on there and do it. It's a very simple one-page application. And then the community members who have the token Mooney, which is like their governance token, can vote whether or not to fund it. So they're still busy. They're trying. These guys have stayed around for 3 years despite the decreases in cryptocurrency and a lot of groups kind of going away. So I think they're in it for the long haul, and
Yeah.
they're good people, trying to do right and trying to make a very weird thing that we're not used to, which is a DAO, work in funding space stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
I will continue to be an advocate for them, and just like I am for anyone in the space industry.
I'm so grateful you mentioned those links. We at our non-for-profit for Stories of Space, we're going to get right on that. Thank you so much. I'll put that in the show notes. There's a
Awesome.
lot of people, a lot of great ideas, startups, especially in the analog astronaut community that will pass this
Yes.
along and pass forward too, because you never know where it's going to land when you apply for some of these grants and opportunities. And you are the walking embodiment example of that. So thank you so much. I can't wait to hear from you again and see you in person at maybe next year's Analog Astronaut Conference. Are you
Absolutely.
planning on doing the world's biggest analog? Are you
I'm not
kind
going
of,
to do the world's biggest analog because of the commitments too long away from my family, but
yeah,
I will. I did tell Jas that I would be happy and honored to come next year. I missed this year's conference, but I'm hoping to come
yeah.
next year
Oh,
and
good. I hope I get
see
to
my
see you.
people.
Oh, we
Yeah.
can't wait to see you too. Hear this all again, and maybe in some more detail, we can really get into the weeds. Especially if there's something that we can start seeing the analog community taking to space, not just people, which is
Yeah.
amazing, but our research, our data, our tech, our tools, the things we're looking to do in those simulations on the ground in space, even if it's short-lived, that's ultimately what we work so hard for. And we really just appreciate. We cannot wait to see you. I know be ready to be inundated. You're going to just be so valued. You always have been. I appreciate you today sharing
Thank you,
with
Beth.
us. And I remember when we did meet, you were always kind of focused towards this goal, even if it was unsaid. So, deepest, sincerest congratulations. I'm glad you're back.
Thank you.
Congrats. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.